Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And even though the Xbox showcase is over and gone, that however hasn't stopped them from announcing yet another exclusive that sounds quite sizable actually, and from a partner studio that Xbox fans might know rather well. There's a lot of potential with this new exclusive partnership here, so we're going to talk about that a little later on today. And then also Sony, they announced they're branching out PlayStation Plus in a rather curious way. Not only will this benefit subscribers, but in kind of a weird way, this also makes the Activision Blizzard acquisition even spicier than it already is. Just gonna go ahead and cue up the weirdness of that buyout. But as always, we do have a lot to get into today, so without any further ado, let's just go and jump right into things. Starting off with Overwatch 2. Overwatch 2 has had a messy first year as they've migrated over to a more season-based battle pass type of live service game. Love it or hate it, that's the new trend, I suppose. But it just kind of seems like Overwatch 2 has struggled with this transition. Some of the decisions that they've made is, it's hit a nerve for the fan base, and emotions really erupted last month when they announced the cancellation of their PvE hero mode, which was one of the justifications of having a sequel in the first place. Instead, what they're going to do here is they're going to release story-based PvE missions, as just announced, the first of which is Overwatch 2 Invasion. This will include permanent access for 3 story-based PvE missions, but there is a catch here. Yes, this is paywalled. It will cost $15, and fans are not thrilled. This seems to have caught a lot of people by surprise. I'm personally not surprised myself, but it does appear a lot of fans were under the impression that story content would be free for those who already paid for the game, specifically Overwatch 1. Instead, though, it looks like Blizzard's going to go full-on live service here with story missions coming with that new seasonal content. Now, it is important to note here, though, that Overwatch 2 Invasion also comes with 1,000 Overwatch coins, which typically would cost $10, a legendary skin for Sojourn, and Sojourn as a playable character for new players. So, I mean, on one side, you can kind of argue that the story content is only $5 extra if you wanted those coins in the first place, but I don't know. Let me know what you all think about all of this. Does it come as a surprise? Is it something that annoys you? And for that matter, do you like this type of live service model? Now, I'm just going to kind of speak for myself here, but I used to play Overwatch 1 all the time. My wife, she loves Overwatch, so this is a game that does hold a special place in my heart, but Overwatch 2, I mean, its business model, it certainly isn't for me, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. Now, we also got a surprise update for Triangle Strategy. Nintendo has been a little bit quiet lately, so I mean, this is good news for you Nintendo fans out there. But Square Enix, they just released update 1.1.0 for Triangle Strategy, which comes with a slew of new content highlighted by a completely new story chapter. Now, it also includes story battle replay features for those of you who want to re-experience specific points of the game, and a few other quality of life improvements. I mean, this update, it just kind of came out of nowhere, but this is a very, very welcome update. Maybe a little late, but if you do want to jump back in, this new story mission will be available for those who completed the Serenoa route. I'll just kind of say this, Team Asano, they really are one of Square's best studios with games like Bravely Default, Live Alive HD, Triangle Strategy, Octopath Traveler. And I mean, the list just kind of goes on and on. They do such a good job, and it's really cool to see them come back to a game like this and just give fans an extra reason to play it with no strings attached. So just big kudos to the Asano team here for their continued excellence. Now, I'll tell you somebody who hasn't been quiet recently, and that's none other than Xbox. They've been the loud, obnoxious kid on the block here recently, but one thing that fans noticed about their showcase was that there were a few key absences, most notably Perfect Dark, State of Decay 3, and Everwild. Well, Xbox's Matt Booty was asked about that, and here was his response. As I think ahead, even as we get into 2025, we've seen builds of games at the initiative. I know just because Undead Labs are there in Seattle, what's going on with State of Decay 3. We've seen these things. So as I look ahead to the next 18 months in terms of what we're going to be able to show and deliver and do that kind of gameplay reveal, I'm cautiously confident because the teams are hard at work and they get that that's kind of the bar now, which is let's show it, let's show up with gameplay and do a deeper dive when we show up. So, while he doesn't necessarily guarantee anything here, The hope is that by the end of 2024, we will get a deep dive into some of those games that we didn't see at their showcase this year. From his wording here, though, quote-unquote, cautiously confident, and him specifically saying the next 18 months for a deep dive, I'm kind of expecting these games to be 2025 releases at the earliest. I mean, who really knows? I could be wrong here. I'm just speculating, but that's just kind of how I read this statement here. And while some people will say that they announced these games too early, I beg to differ because as a fan of Perfect Dark myself, and coming from somebody who's been screaming for a reboot for years and years, I'm honestly just glad to know it exists at all. I've said this time and time again, but sometimes it's just exciting knowing that a game exists at all. I mean, in a hypothetical situation, I'd go ballistic if they were to announce, let's say, Banjo-Kazooie 3 with a simple logo and nothing else. If they were to do that, I would go absolutely crazy, because just knowing it exists, that's exciting in its own. Now, after that, I just kind of want them to take their time and get things right. Now, as for the long development times, though, that is something that we're seeing on a more regular cadence across the industry. Big AAA games anymore, they take anywhere from 4 to 7 years. We're no longer in a period of time where games get pumped out in just a few years' time. At the very least, though, with this statement here, we can now peg both Perfect Dark and State of Decay 3 as possible reveal candidates for next year, or, if we're lucky, maybe this year at places like Gamescom or the Game Awards. Speaking of early Xbox exclusive announcements, though, Microsoft and People Can Fly just entered an agreement to work on an exclusive Microsoft IP codenamed Project Maverick with a budget of $30 to $50 million US. Now, if you're not aware of this studio, People Can Fly has a long track record with Xbox dating back to Gears Judgment, and then the recent Xbox Game Pass release, Outriders, which also had a lot of success on the platform. They're also behind the cult classic Bulletstorm, and a lot of people had a lot of fun with that game, but here, they're going back to Xbox as their publisher once again, and are getting a nice little budget here. But what really stands out about this agreement is that it's for a Microsoft IP. Now, that really could mean one of two things. This could either be a new IP that Microsoft will own, or it could be for an already existing IP, such as, well, Gears of War. I mean, if it is for an existing IP, that would be the safest bet here. They've already worked on the Gears of War franchise with the spin-off Judgment, and even though I don't really think that game was all that great, People Can Fly has since shown a lot of improvement with their new IP. Even with Outriders, you can see the clear, very, very clear Gears of War inspiration. Outside of the Coalition, People Can Fly would make the most sense for a new Gears of War title, or the much requested Gears collection. A lot of people want that, and People Can Fly could be the perfect fit for a collection like that, while the Coalition works on Gears 6. Now, to be fair here, though, People Can Fly could try their hands at a completely different franchise entirely. There's no guarantees that this will be Gears related. Maybe it could be a new Halo game, or hey, they could really just go out left field here with something like Conquer, or let's go ahead and say Banjo-Kazooie. Not really the studio that I would think about for those type of franchises, but hey, we are in the early days, and we can just kind of throw some crazy speculation at the wall if we want. By all means, though, it'll likely be a while before we see exactly what they're working on, and it very well could actually be a brand new IP. It's just owned by Microsoft. That, however, is still something to keep an eye on. People Can Fly is definitely a promising studio. Now, I do believe that they need to further polish their games, but they do, however, know how to make fun games, and that is very much clear with both Outriders and Bulletstorm. Okay, so we do have some PlayStation news here as well, as they just announced the June PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium lineup alongside a rather interesting new feature. We'll get back to that here in just a second, but first, let's go take a look here at the full lineup, which includes 27 games. Yeah, they are going full-on quantity here, but there's also a lot of quality because let's just go and just check this out. This list includes Inscription, Far Cry 6, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, Rogue Legacy 2, Solstice, Tacoma, Deus Ex Mankind Divided, Killing Floor 2, Lonely Mountains Downhill, Vampire the Masquerade, 100 Days Winemaking Simulator, A Hat in Time, Carto, Forager, Dodgeball Academia, The Wild at Heart, Redout 2, Thief, MX vs. ATV Legends, Paw Patrol Mighty Pups, My Friend Peppa Pig, DC League of Super Pets, the Talos Principle Deluxe Edition, LX2, and there's also a game trial for WWE 2K23. And then for those PlayStation Classics, you'll get Killzone Liberation for the PlayStation Portable, Worms for the PlayStation 1, and then Herc's Adventures for PlayStation 1. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of games here to check out if you've missed out on any of these previously. Now, just a few recommendations from me. Do make sure to play Shredder's Revenge. This game released last year, and it's being praised for a very, very good reason. It truly is one of the best old-school beat-em-up games here in recent memory, and it also makes for an excellent cooperative experience. Definitely go check that one out. Hat in Time, this is another one that I would highly recommend. If you like old-school 3D platformers such as Banjo-Kazooie, things like Mario 64, any one of those collectathon 3D platformers, well, Hat in Time will be right up your alley. It's got a lot of heart and definitely one of the better 3D collectathon platformers. Dodgeball Academia. That's also a good hidden gem here on this list. It's a very unique RPG centered around, of course, dodgeball. It sounds weird, and, well, honestly, it kind of is, but it is still a blast to play. Definitely don't sleep on this one. Same can be said for The Wild at Heart. This is yet another good hidden gem, but this time inspired by the likes of Pikmin, but in more of a Metroidvania world. It's the combination that I never knew I needed, but as it turns out, it works phenomenally well. So those are just a few of my own personal recommendations, but I mean, I could continue on with games like the Talos Principle. I mean, you got Red Out on this list. I mean, Deus Ex. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of really good games on this list. So once again, you know, Sony's doing a good job at filling their PlayStation Plus catalog. Now, I would like to see them add some more new games. That is something that I would like to see them improve on. But hey, at the very least, they are adding a lot of existing quality titles for those that missed out on them previously. Now, as for this new feature, though, and this caught my eye for a few different reasons. Sony has now announced that they are bringing cloud gaming to PlayStation Plus Premium members, where they can play the PlayStation Plus catalog and select PS5 titles that you own through the cloud on your PlayStation 5. Now, this is a nice little feature to have. This is something that Xbox Game Pass Ultimate offers as well, and one of the benefits of having an option like this is that instead of downloading a game right away, instead, what you can do is that you can simply test the game out before you download it. I know a lot of people do that. I have myself, and it is a nice option to have. Now, with that in mind, though, this feature isn't available to players just yet. They're in the testing phase currently, but this is something they are going to be bringing to PlayStation Plus Premium sometime here in the soonish future. One thing that kind of jumped out at me, though, is the timing of this announcement. You know, the thing is that the CMA, they're trying to block Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard because of, apparently, cloud gaming. Now, they claim that Microsoft is just too big in this market, and one way that they kind of justified that is by saying every Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription counts as a cloud user. I mean, technically, if you subscribe to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, yeah, you have access to the cloud. That much is very much true, but in reality, the CMA's definition is overstated because that's not really why people are subscribing to a service like this. It's more or less just kind of an added bonus, but if they want to stick with this definition, well, I mean, I guess, again, technically, Sony will now immediately have millions upon millions of cloud subscriptions with PlayStation Plus Premium. I don't know. The CMA's argument just kind of keeps getting weaker and weaker by the day. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, as games become more graphically demanding, would you like to see developers give a 40 frames per second option as a good middle ground? You Steam Deck owners out there knows the benefit of this option quite well, and apparently a lot of you all do as well, because 75% of you voted for yes, while only 17% said no. I mean, honestly, 40 frames, it does feel good. Quite a bit better than 30, in my own opinion. It's a bigger improvement than you might think. And that's kind of the thing here. There's been a few games here recently that struggled a little bit when it comes to their performance. Jedi Survivor is one example, and then also the Final Fantasy 16 demo running on performance mode, that's been having some frame pacing issues as well. Now, to be fair, I'm still not really convinced that that will be the case for the full release of Final Fantasy 16. The demo very well might be outdated, as we discussed yesterday, and the game itself, from what I've been hearing, is quite amazing. Can't wait to play it myself. But back to my point. In certain situations where frame rate is inconsistent, a 40 frames option would be nice to have. Now, some of you, however, did mention that this would only be possible on a 120Hz TV, and not everybody necessarily has one, so this option might not be viable. But I disagree with that, and the reason I say that is because with that line of thinking, then no game should offer a 120 frame rate option either, because again, not everybody has a 120Hz TV. You know, it's kind of the same thing, so options are just that, options. It doesn't mean that it'll benefit everybody. But if 120 frames per second is an option, I think 40 should become a more common option as well. All in all, though, I mean, the thing that I have learned over the years is that the most important thing when it comes to frame rate is consistency. While higher frame rate, yes, is better, that means next to nothing if there's frame pacing problems. It just makes it feel jittery and unintuitive when your frame rate is unstable. So more or less, a consistent 30 frames is better than an unstable 60. And that's even more so at 40 frames. A consistent 40 is better than 30, and it's way better than a struggling 60. So yeah, I'd like to see this option become a little bit more common in the future. So I mean, come on developers, if it's possible, keep note. There's an option that fans want. Anyways though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.